General Sirius watched in shocked disbelief as the human bullet crushed the skulls of his first lieutenants, who were about to be destroyed. Centuries ago, this was not possible. The two empires began a brutal war of genocide. This conflict against humanity has been long, bloody, and catastrophic. It was a battle between the two sides, but in the end, the technological side prevailed, blasting Earth into a lifeless shell and chasing the remnants of humanity scattered across the stars. In the history of the Galactic Federation, the books tell the story of the final defeat and extinction of humanity. The galaxy continued to consider people nothing more than precautions from the past, but now a human soldier has triggered Sirius's secret military outputs, leaving the trail of destruction and awakening. The general's thoughts raced as he barked orders to his troops, demanding they bring him this impossible. Humans dead or alive hours earlier, Captain Jake Morales had awoken from cryogenic stasis aboard the Darrell battleship. The USS Pursues, adrift in uncharted space, confused and disoriented. Soon, he discovered the terrible truth. He was most likely the last person alive. The ship's logs chronicle humanity's last desperate attempt to protect the few remaining remnants of the species, with thousands of survivors placed in cryopods and sent into the void to avoid two genocidal finales, a perfect campaign. Determined to find the morality of the rest of humanity, he travels to the nearest habitable world in a not-so-functional escape pod. The crash landing is brutal, but he survives only to encounter a toad with only a gun and a mind. The captain relies on covert sabotage and guerrilla tactics to avoid the increasingly angry aliens. General Sirius felt an unfamiliar sensation, and fear crawled up his spine as reports of humanity's exploits reached his ears. This lone human achieves the impossible, fighting with a ferocity and cunning that surpasses anything we know this species is capable of. The alliance was wrong. Humanity is not extinct. If there is one survivor, there may be more. It should be known that Sirius is sending a coded message to the top command of human soldiers detected at the outpost, and repeated sightings and involvement of human survivors indicate a state of maximum alert. We were supposed to capture and interrogate all the reinforcements sent to my location, but just as he was sending the message, morale was hacked and intercepted part of the translated CNET, and it made his blood boil as he realized what was at stake. If the two empires learn that humans still exist and find the location of the other cryopods, they can finish the job they started centuries ago. Unless morality can stop humanity from disappearing from the universe forever when the ships start landing on Earth, Morales knew he had to make a choice. Steal the boat and escape and continue the desperate search for survivors, or stay and stop the two men. By spreading the word of human survival, the fate of mankind was balanced by the last person who was ready to express his opinion. Morales, who were aware of Sirius's crawling warning, fired towards his bumped, fleeing pots and set the course for the secret of the research institution. The coordinates flickered on his hollow screen as he tapped them with trembling fingers. He has to find out if there are other people left. Any information could mean humanity's survival or eternal extinction. The pod trembled and groaned, barely hanging on. Morale gripped the controls as it hurtled through the void. His fists clenched and teeth gritted, hoping the little ship could last a little longer. The moon became larger, showing an abandoned gray orbit that hangs in space. He was focused on the largest structure on the surface, the squatted ugly black metal building and reinforced concrete with a bone crashed, and the cellphone crashed on the rocky surface of the moon, sliding and turning before throwing the building on the wall. Throwing his gun in his hand, Morales opened the hatch and jumped into the cold, quiet place. The building loomed above him, dark and forbidding, the toilet on the wall fading in time, but still terrifying to Morales. He pressed it, checked the oxygen level, and went to the nearest one. As Morales walked cautiously down the hall, only the narrow beam of light from his helmet illuminated the shadows on the wall. The air echoed off the metal floor, smelling musty, and his skin crawled with every step, a pit of dread in his stomach. For the first time, he discovered that cells were kept in the forest, cells long dead, doors like monstrous mouths, and rooms empty except for the remains of metal beds bolted to the floor. The leather braces were still attached, and Morale swallowed hard. He didn't want to think about the pain that was happening here. The lab's examination table was even worse, with straps hanging from rusted wooden poles and trays of ominous surgical instruments, scalpels, bone saws, and other things Morale couldn't identify scattered on the far wall. Several transparent thoughts filled with a dark, floating moral approach, holding light and departing from the terror in each tank. A nightmare-like fusion of two inhuman limbs distorts the painful face. Half-formed body suspended in the murky fluid bow rising in his throat. Morales stumbled back and fled the room, rage and grief warring within him, fueling his persistence to expose these atrocities to the galaxy. He needed to find that database. He had to know if there were still people out there. The command center still has extra capacity. Morales lifted the access panel and plugged the system back in with trembling fingers, the mainframe glowing with life and the material of the holographic screen in the air. Aware that his scan data was frantically translating T-scripts into his suit's basic language pack. His discovery turns his blood into an icy record of horrific experiments. Attempts to create a hybrid warrior species combining human traits with their own biology have failed, attempt after attempt, ending in the subject's agonizing death. But the latest entry is a breakthrough. Some imprisoned humans proved to be more resilient and were able to withstand reconnection to survive the transformation process. The recordings ended abruptly with the note that the remaining test subjects were being moved out into the world for further experiments. A moral of despair delving into the TOF files. He discovered communications about a large orbital shipyard. In a nearby star system, the two are building a new formidable warship, more powerful than any previous fleet, so that they can conquer a dozen more worlds and hunt down the last remnants of humanity. Morales slammed his fist against the console. He can't. If this happens, we need to warn the galaxy to rise towards the tube before it's too late. He scavenged components from the command center to install a makeshift remote transmitter. He is not an engineer, but he must try to connect a battery and ask for it to charge. He broadcast a message on every frequency. He could urgently appeal to any friendly power to hear him out. He read the situation in the shipyards, coordinated the details of the construction of the dreadnought and the genocidal plan, and promised that the Avengers would fight to the last breath to stop and save them. What's left of humanity? If anyone is still willing to support him, he just finished teleporting. As the facility's proximity alarm sounds and the two prepare to arrive, Admiral Creek has detected a signal from the shipyard and knows that someone is now responsible for launching an attack on the moon cannon, ready to neutralize this threat. Morales barricaded himself in the command center to check the gun's charge. Every step he takes leaves the toy covered in blood. The first fighters screeched and fired overhead, the building filled with plasma bolts throughout the structure. Morale rose as the airlock seals cracked and opened, and the thunder of heavy combat boots grew. The hall was full of wild laughter, and his face showed these aliens how humans fought on the edge of the galaxy. A group of wrecked ships received a dying distress call, and a greedy mercenary named Corey leaned forward in the captain's chair, his brow furrowed. Listening to the sounds, he never thought he would hear human voices. His crew members exchanged shocked looks as a drone blared over the speakers, recounting the pair's crimes and pleading for friends. "All right, kids," Burke growled. He's got a killer glint in his eye, and it looks like we just had a chance to give this guy in the dust a real nosebleed. I never thought I'd have a human to thank for it. A cheer went up from the assembled aliens, a mixed mix of mercenaries, pirates, and renegades from a dozen worlds, all united in their hatred of tyranny. Plot a course for these coordinates. D was ordered to check the charge of his plasma. Guns, it seems we are heading for war in the shipyard. A narrow creek tilts as the final stages of construction begin on his mighty flagship. Dauntless is loaded with weapons. The unstoppable Hegemon Omen, once complete, cannot stand in the way of their conquest. Sirens screamed across the bridge, and the commentator turned to follow the sensor officer's report.